In 19th century England, it was illegal to handle a salmon in suspicious circumstances. Not steal it, not smuggle it, just handle it. Suspiciously. What does that even look like? Does the salmon look guilty? Do you? Every law on the books exists because someone somewhere did something so infuriating that an entire legislature had to stop governing and make it officially wrong. And the best part? Most of these were actually enforced. Real judges, real courtrooms, real people trying to explain why their pig was wearing pants. This is the history of human pettiness codified. And by the end of this video, you'll understand why a 19th century pig arguably had better legal representation than you do. Let's start with the salmon. The UK's Salmon Act of 1986 does, in fact, contain a clause making it illegal to handle a salmon in suspicious circumstances. It was designed to fight fish fraud. But the wording is so deliciously vague, you could imagine a Victorian detective cornering a man in a dark alley, flashlight under the chin, whispering, "The salmon. Where did you get the salmon?" And people have been prosecuted under statutes like this. In 2012, a man in the UK was fined for moving a salmon through a non-designated route. His defense? He claimed he was just helping it get home. The court was not moved. The salmon was not consulted. In 1313, King Edward II issued a statute technically still in force today. It is illegal to enter the Houses of Parliament wearing a suit of armor. You might think, well, duh. You don't want armed knights storming democracy. But context matters. In 1313, debates ended in sword fights. Edward II wasn't being cautious. He was exhausted. He banned armor, not weapons, just armor. You could still bring a sword. You just couldn't protect yourself from someone else's. It was the medieval equivalent of, we're not saying don't fight. We're saying fight fair and vulnerably. In 2015, a journalist tried to enter Parliament in a chainmail shirt as a stunt. Security stopped him. The 700-year-old law was cited. Britain remains deeply committed to the principle that democracy functions best when everyone is slightly terrified. In 1837, a man in Hartford, Connecticut was fined for allowing his pig to run loose. Standard stuff. Except the pig was wearing pants. The law prohibited swine running at large. The owner argued his pig was not at large because it was clothed. It was dressed. It was a civilized pig participating in society. The court rejected this. The pig was fined. The pants were not entered into evidence, which is a tragedy for historians, and a victory for municipal dignity. This case established no legal precedent, but it did prove one thing. Americans have been using absurd technicalities to avoid consequences since before we had a country. Now, another UK classic. The claim, it is illegal to die in the Houses of Parliament. The rumor? Anyone who dies in a royal palace is entitled to a state funeral, and Parliament didn't want to pay for every inconvenient heart attack. This is complete nonsense. People have died in Parliament. Several MPs have expired during debates, probably from boredom, possibly from rage. No one was arrested posthumously. But the persistence of this myth tells us something real. We want to believe legislatures are so obsessed with accounting, they would criminalize death itself to save a few bucks. And honestly, given the rest of this list, it's not that hard to believe that in 1735, Britain passed the Witchcraft Act. You might assume this made witchcraft illegal. It did not. It made pretending to be a witch illegal. It was essentially a consumer protection statute for people buying love potions, and it was enforced. In 1944, a woman named Helen Duncan was prosecuted under this act for claiming she could summon spirits. The government didn't prosecute her because they thought she was a real witch. They prosecuted her because she was a fake witch who was too convincing. During wartime, authorities were terrified her seances might reveal classified military information, specifically that certain ships had been sunk before the government announced it. She was convicted. She served 9 months in prison. She was the last person imprisoned under the Witchcraft Act for pretending to talk to ghosts too accurately during World War I. In 1910, Portland, Oregon made it illegal to whistle in an elevator. The fine was $500, which in today's money is roughly ruin your life. The reasoning? Safety. Whistling might distract the human elevator operator, causing them to overshoot the floor and plunge everyone into the basement. No recorded prosecutions exist, but the law stayed on the books for decades, a monument to municipal anxiety about the dangers of joy in confined spaces. In Milan, Italy, it was once legally required to smile at all times. Exceptions were made for funerals and hospitals. Every other moment of your life was required to be cheerful, by decree. The penalty? A fine. For frowning. In Italy, it was a branding exercise. But imagine the psychological toll. Knowing your natural human response to grief was a municipal violation. This is the dark side of weird laws. They're funny until you imagine living under them. Speaking of living under them, in 1919, Washington State passed a law requiring that if a fish is transported on a public bus, it must be seated and secured. The fish could not stand. As if a bus driver might have to say, "Sir, your mackerel needs to sit down or I'm stopping this vehicle." For 56 years, Washington maintained the legal fiction that fish were passengers with rights. In 2005, a British pub landlord was threatened with prosecution for making Stilton cheese in the village of Stilton. Stilton cheese has protected designation of origin status. It can only be made in 3 specific counties. The village of Stilton is in a 4th. Therefore, cheese made in Stilton cannot legally be called Stilton. The law doesn't care about etymology. It cares about boundaries drawn by bureaucrats. The pub was forced to rename their award-winning cheese Bell's Blue. This is weird law at its most poetic. The protection becomes the erasure. The village that invented the thing cannot claim the thing. Weird laws aren't dead. They're just evolving. France made it illegal to answer work emails after 6 p.m. Portugal banned employers from texting employees outside work hours. These seem progressive, but in 50 years, they will look as bizarre as the Salmon statute. You mean they had to pass a law to stop their boss from texting them at midnight? What kind of dystopia was that? Every weird law is a fossil of a specific anxiety. They aren't weird because the people who wrote them were stupid. They're weird because they were written by humans who were frustrated, frightened, or furious about something so specific that only a bizarre law could address. So the next time you see a headline about a strange regulation, don't just laugh. Ask what happened. Ask who was so annoyed, so threatened, so confused by the world changing around them, that they needed the government to make it stop. Because behind every weird law is a very human story of someone who just couldn't handle the salmon. If you enjoyed this dive into legal absurdity, hit that like button and let me know in the comments. Which of these laws would you be most likely to accidentally break? Subscribe for more hidden history, and I'll see you in the next one.